All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Laydown podcast. I'm your host, Ultra, of course, joined by my co host, Lenny B, as always. And today we are doing an episode on ranking each team that finished last in their division based on how likely it is they go from last to first entering the 2022 NFL season. So, just real quickly, the teams that did not finish, or the teams that did finish for last, I don't know why I'm struggling there, but the teams that did finish last in the division last season: the Baltimore Ravens, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the New York Jets, the Denver Broncos, the Detroit Lions, the Carolina Panthers, the New York Giants, and the Seattle Seahawks were the eight last placing teams. So I think it's pretty interesting. I certainly think there are a couple teams that have a better chance than others. Lenny, you have any thoughts on this before we dive in?
Yeah, there's always that team. You're just like, how did they? Like, you're just shocked if you look at the Bengals last year, the Niners in 2019. The Bucks. You could even argue with Brady. People were sleeping on them. There's always a team that just comes out of nowhere, shocks the world, and it's always hard to pinpoint that team. But it's fun to talk about because imagination's the limit.
It's interesting for sure because I certainly think there's two teams that I just named that are clearly a step, at least one above the rest. But they
At
also
least on
happen to
paper,
play.
yes.
They both teams happen to play in the two toughest divisions,
Oh,
so it's hard to rank because in this you have to balance like how strong the team is with how tough the division is. So that's kind of the
exactly.
thing. It's not necessarily just ranking each team. So let's kick this off at number eight. I'll let you start here. Who do you have at number eight?
Look, just for this
The
season, I
least
know
likely.
I might get hate for this, but I'm gonna put the Lions
Oh, you have the
on
Lions at
last of my
number eight.
list. Look, I get it. Like, it was between one and two teams between it in the last spot. But the Lions, like, I see on paper that they actually do have a pretty good offense, but the quarterback situation is just never going to elevate them to like a worst to first team. There is just no chance in my mind, man, that Jared Goff is going to beat the Packers and the Vikings in this division and go from for worst to first. The defense is still a mess. It's still very bad. It has talent now with Aiden Hutchinson, and it's just I just can't see it. I can see long term where this could go, but they're missing the two most important positions here. You're missing a good coaching staff, like a really good coaching staff, and a good quarterback. And everything else on offense, they're good, but it's just not enough. It's just I don't think it's going to be enough with Aaron Rodgers in the division. I just don't think so.
Yeah, so I actually have them a bit higher because number one, I don't think that division is very good. Um,
That's
and
fair.
I can see, I'll get to it when I get to the Lions. At number eight, this was no hesitation for me. I'm stunned you did not have this team at number eight. It's the Seattle Seahawks.
I have a reason.
So, first of all, the Seattle Seahawks are, I think I ranked their offense and their defense in the bottom three for my rankings. Go check those out, by the way. Um, they're really bad.
No, they
Like,
are.
in
I
terms
agree.
of the teams that are the worst in the league, you can make a strong case the Seahawks are the worst team in the NFL right now. And you look at their division, they finished last season. It wasn't all that close either. And they had Russell Wilson for most of the year. And Russell Wilson, even though he wasn't at his best last year, he was still a good quarterback. Um, Now they're either starting Geno Smith or Drew Lock, both of which are bad quarterbacks, backup caliber quarterbacks. They have an offensive line that I think is worse. The weapons are all right, but the defense is also bad. And I think Pete Carroll is regressing with each year that passes, especially with the influx of coaching talent in the last couple of years that has come in, especially in his own division with Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan, two of the best coaches in the NFL that I think have made him look somewhat outdated over the last couple of years in some of those matchups. So you combine that with the fact that this division, I think, is significantly tougher than the NFC North. You look at the Rams, who are the Super Bowl champions, one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl this year. You look at the Niners, another team that's up there in odds for winning the Super Bowl. And the Cardinals, who are still like a respectable borderline playoff team, 7 to 9 win team. All three of those teams are significantly more talented. I don't see a scenario where this team wins. Like I can't even think of picturing it. So I have the Seahawks at number 8.
Look, I will admit I am a bit biased on this. Like I'm gonna admit that, and it's only because the Seahawks have tormented me for so long. Like no, it's not. Maybe not the only reason,
But that
but
was
if
Russell Wilson.
no, I know I cannot. I gotta see it before I can believe it. But
I wouldn't
they're my
be
seventh team. They're my
I
seventh team.
wouldn't
To
be
be fair,
stunned if they maybe beat a divisional team at home.
they're
But
gonna sweep the Niners again, bro. Watch. I'm sorry. Okay, so number 7, I have the Seahawks too. Again, I was like between the Lions and the Seahawks. I don't think the Lions roster is like that good, man. I mean, like I'm trying to like I just a lot of people are saying they're going to be really good. I think the Lions and Seahawks are like the same tier. The only difference to me is that the Lions don't have the opportunity at coach and quarterback to significantly get better. I think with the Seahawks, similar style rosters and quarterback and coach, we've seen the coach be at least decent. We know Pete Carroll's at least like average and he could elevate. I mean, like I have more faith in Pete Carroll being a better coach this year than Dan Campbell. And I think with the quarterback situation, though I don't think Drew Lock or Geno Smith are very good, I think they have more potential to be like a really good quarterback than Jared Goff. That's my thinking. That's my line of thinking when I came up with this. Because like I just like the Lions, like I get it, like they have a lot of new pieces, but I really don't see them separating a lot from the Seahawks roster. I just like
I,
roster wise, they're both about the same. That's my reasoning. I get like the division's really tough, but if I'm going like potential wise, I'd probably slightly lean to the Seahawks. It's like it's not one and two, and part of it is also my bias on like just the Seahawks tormenting me for years. So
I think Russell Wilson, the stat was like he was 17-3 against the 49ers
yes,
in
it's
the
actually it's just
over
sad.
10 years, which is
It's
insane. It's like Brady Bills level owning at that point. But yeah, Peyton Manning Texans level owning. But at number 7 for me, this may be a little bit surprising, but it's the New York Jets. And look, I actually like the Jets more than a couple teams that I have above them. I think the Jets overall, roster wise, are pretty decent. Like, I don't think their offense or defense is necessarily that bad. I think that their talent has certainly improved. There's two reasons that I'm not sold on. I think they're this low. So number one is coaching. I'm not a fan of Robert Saleh. I don't. I think he's a solid
is it
defensive
Soleil? I
mind,
always thought it was
but as a
Solid.
head coach, I haven't seen anything from him yet. And I'm not sold on their offensive coordinator either, Mike LaFleur. He's not as good as his brother. I'll say that. And the other reason, though, is this division again. The AFC East. Well, for years it wasn't very hard when Brady was winning. Um, it's really tough now. Like you have the Buffalo Bills, who are the Super Bowl favorites. You have the Miami Dolphins, who are a borderline playoff team, and the Patriots, who are still at worst all right, and at best also a borderline playoff team. So the Jets are the worst team in this division, and even if they have like a breakout kind of season, it's still going to take a ton for them to finish first in the division because of how good the Bills are. And I just think that roadblock of Buffalo is completely blocking out this team from winning the division. Even though I don't think like of the 8 last placing teams last year, they're not the 7th best. But I think in terms of likelihood, because of how strong the division is, they're ranking at 7 for me.
Are we going for who wins the division or who's just going to be like really good?
Like who
Because
goes from worst to first, the most likely to win the division.
okay, all right, that's what I figured. I was just making sure. Um, I was between another two teams here. I think I'm gonna. I think I went with the Jets though because same reason. Like I like the Jets more than a couple of these other teams. I look at the potential X factors from past teams that have really exploded. Quarterback and receiver and coach are the most important positions. They have an opportunity to get better at all three of those. And at corner, Sauce Gardner, another very important position they got to get better at. And it's not really their fault from a roster standpoint.
Right.
It's just the Bills is like they're like probably the best team in the NFL right now. It would have to take them getting injured, the every single player with potential on the Jets taking a significant jump, and then also the coaching staff showing what they haven't shown yet, which
And
is a
there's
lot.
still Miami and New England who are
And there's
already
still
both ahead
Miami.
of
You know,
them.
I think bottom line they need Buffalo to be injured though. I don't see a
Right.
timeline where they aren't injured and they're just not good enough to win the division.
Because with Josh Allen, their floor is too high.
I guess Josh Allen would have to get injured.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're not playing on that. We're not like talking about that. But yeah, I agree. I put them at 6 too.
All right. So at number 6 for me, I have the Detroit Lions. The reason for this is I think their division is weaker. Um, I think they're better than the Bears, just straight up. I don't even think it's really that much of a debate. I was looking at the Bears roster earlier because I was working on some graphics with Mitch. It's really bad, y'all. Like
Oh yeah, no,
it
it's
is not
oh.
pretty. I think the Lions are better. I think the Lions offense has potential to be pretty good. If as long as Jared Goff, who is like he's not good. It's hard to say. He's like Jimmy Garoppolo, but a little worse, I guess, in that they were both carried by great coordinators and offensive coaches. But uh, like he's like a decent distributor. He has an all right arm. He has a little more mobility than you think. He's an all right quarterback. Like he's a starting quarterback in this league, unlike Geno Smith or Drew Lock. And the rest of the offense, like their offensive line's top 5. TJ Hawkinson's a top 7, 8 tight ends. They've got a pretty solid receiving core. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, when he gets back, is pretty good. Hopefully, as a rookie, he was my favorite receiver in the draft. And then DJ Chark's pretty good. DeAndre Swift, of course, I love. He's a former Georgia guy, but also pretty good running back in his own right. So the offense has potential. The problem is, I think the defense is the worst in football. It's that
Yes,
bad.
it's
Uh,
very bad.
Aiden Hutchinson and Harris on the edges are pretty promising, but other than that, there's not much. So that's what's holding me back. They also have this weird thing where, like, I don't know, it feels like the Lions have a weird thing with the Packers where they just can't beat them in any meaningful game for like 30 years. I don't know why, but it just feels like that. But like because of the division, if the Packers offense really struggles without Devontae Adams, maybe they have a couple injuries defensively. They are not the deepest there. Maybe that defense isn't as good as we think. Maybe Dan Campbell, like, because he's a great motivator of such, and he like really rises this team up. And they lost a couple close games last year. If they win some of those, maybe the Vikings. It takes a year for Kevin O'Connell to fully imprint his system in there. Then who knows? Maybe it could happen. It's probably not going to happen, but you never know. So the Lions for me at number
I,
6.
I mean, the Bengals just almost won the Super Bowl. I mean, I don't think I'm at the point where I'm just not willing to accept any option at this point. Anyway, my next,
Number 5.
number 5, I got the Panthers. The reason I put the Panthers here is a couple of reasons. Number one, I'm just not a believer in the quarterback situation. It's just such a mess, man. Oh my God, you cannot win a division with 3 different quarterbacks, man. I'm sorry, you just can't do it. And coaching wise, that's number 2. I just do not believe in the coaching staff, man. I just can't. Ben McAdoo, man, really? That's your offensive coordinator. I do think that they have good talent. I'm not like out here just saying that their team is bad. They upgraded at O-line. They have some decent receivers. They have pretty good receiver. Like DJ Moore is really good. Past that, it's not great. But overall, I just getting past Tom Brady in the division, it's hard for me to see. The only thing with him is you're banking on him like being older and like maybe something tweaks in his body and he just isn't the same kind of Brady, similar to 2015 Manning maybe. But the roster is still super good on the Bucks. I just can't put them over them with all these X factors on the Panthers. There's just too many. I don't think it's gonna work out on the Panthers for me to think. Plus Tom Brady being in the division.
Yeah, and I have the Panthers at number 5 as well. Like you said, even if Brady, because Brady last year was like MVP of football level good, even if he goes from MVP of football to like just all right, the Bucks roster is still by far the best in this division. Well,
Julio
maybe
Jones,
not
man.
by far, but like an all right Brady is still probably the best quarterback in the division. No offense to Jameis Winston or Baker Mayfield, but um, and the rest of the roster is so strong they could probably still win 10 games like that, and that might be enough for this division. I also again have Carolina at 5. I think their offense is going to be better because I do think Baker Mayfield's better than who they've had at quarterback the last few years. Uh, Also, Christian McCaffrey being back, hopefully for a full season, is huge for this team because I still think when healthy, he's arguably the best back in the league with everything he does as both a runner and receiver. The receiving core isn't, as you said, isn't great behind DJ Moore, but Robbie Anderson has showed some things in the past. We'll see there.
It was
The
so bad
offensive
last
line
year,
is
man.
better. And the defense, even though it's not as good, I don't think talent wise as it was last season, it's still pretty good. Like I'd still say it's a top half defense and such. They get J.C. Horn back, who was injured for most of last year, which helps. Their pass rush with Brown and Iwanitis and Burns is all right. They've got some decent players at linebacker like Shaq Thompson, who I really like. So, and I think they've got a pretty underrated defensive scheme. I can see like it's kind of the same with the Lions. I just think they're a little more talented than the Lions, which is why I have them above. But I think like they're better than the Falcons, as I think it's pretty obvious. But the Saints, I would put above them. But I think the Saints, there's potential for the Panthers. I can see the Panthers being better than the Saints easier than I can see the Lions being better than the Vikings, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And I think both. I think either of them being better than the Packers or Bucks is unlikely. So that's why I have the Panthers at 5.
A lot of these are actually just like one team just being that good, which is kind of
Yeah,
funny.
yeah.
Like it's just hard to bet against those teams more than it is to betting for these teams. And that's why I'm putting the Jaguars next because I am a big believer in the Colts this year. I'm just a huge believer in the Colts this year, man. I really think they're going to be a really good team. I just think Matt Ryan is that guy. Okay, I still think he's that guy. I mean, I saw a lot of good stuff from him last year, considering his circumstances. I've seen some videos about how he used to be a perimeter kind of guy, and then they had to squeeze it to a middle of the field kind of offense because they just didn't have any talent. Anyway, I just think the Jaguars are more like they have a better opportunity because number one, this is the worst division in football probably at this point. And number two, Doug Peterson being the new head coach is a huge upgrade. They probably went from arguably like the worst head coach in NFL history, at least that stint. That stint was probably the worst in NFL history to someone who you could just be like, yeah, we can respect that.
He's
He's all
won a
right.
Super Bowl.
He's won a Super Bowl. I mean, even though it was a great roster, he's still a decent coach. And if you're really banking on Trevor Lawrence, the reason why he was not great last year was because of the coaching and all that. I mean, they upgraded at a lot of positions, and the division isn't great. But ultimately, I would have put another team probably in front of them, uh, if or behind them. Sorry, if I didn't think the Colts were going to be so good this year. I just think they got the division on lock.
Yeah, for me, it was between the Jags and another team who I have at number 3 for this spot. I ultimately put the Jags here because I do have a little more faith, as you said, in the Colts than I do the best team in that division. And I also think that team is a little better than the Jags are. But I think the Jags, because they're, of course, they're better than the Texans, there's just like a legitimate possibility. And I'm not the biggest Trevor Lawrence guy, but there's a chance, and that's not completely like insane to think about, that Trevor Lawrence by the end of the year could be the best quarterback in the division.
He
Given
could.
Matt Ryan's age, given the kind of trajectory of Ryan Tannehill right now, there's a chance. Now he's got some improvements to work on, but
It's an
there's a
outside shot,
chance.
but yeah. I mean, if you're banking
Um,
on the Peyton Manning learning curve too,
and what I guess the one thing with the similarity with Peyton Manning, he was fairly good at not taking sacks last year, even with one of the worst offensive lines in football. The offensive line is still pretty weak, though. Um, I don't think the weapons are bad. Like I think ETN's fine. Marvin Jones, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones. That's a solid
oh my
receiving
God,
core.
Christian Kirk, man.
Evan Ingram's all right at tight ends. They don't have like any game breakers, but they have a bunch of guys that kind of fit their role pretty well and are pretty solid players. So their offense has potential, especially with Doug Peterson now calling plays, and maybe they can implement more of the RPO into the offense because of how it's been trending at both the college and NFL level in recent years, and because it worked for Peterson in Philadelphia. Defensively, they have some talent. Like I like their linebacker core,
Before you
Khan, who they
cited
signed from the
Lucan.
Falcons, and Devin Lloyd, who they drafted. Um, Trayvon Walker, the number one pick, and Josh Allen on the edge, who's very good. So they have some talent defensively. I'm not a fan of the safety core, but other than that,
Their
there's
corners
some
are pretty
talent.
solid,
Yeah,
honestly.
there's some talent there. They added Darius Williams. They have Shaquille Griffin. They have Tyson Campbell. So the Jags, I can see it because they have a lot of young talent that if they break out in a fairly weak division, it's not like the AFC East. The AFC South's weaker, um, considering the Titans will be worse. The Colts should be better, but there's always a chance, like a new quarterback, you never completely know. So
Mhm.
I put the Jags at 4.
Yeah, he went over it pretty well. I for number three, I think we're probably at this point have the same list.
Probably.
The Giants, I got number three.
Yeah.
It's hard to the last two teams are very hard to replace just because of their
They're so
talent
much
level.
better.
And like we start to see a disconnect from this team to the next. So yeah, the Giants I have at number three. I put a lot of faith into the fact that I think Brian Dable is a very good coach. I think he's at least a pretty good coach. And going from like I know again another big coaching staff change from what was his name? Freaking the new Bill the Patriots half
Joe
offensive
Judge.
coordinator, Joe Judge. I mean, to Bill. No, sorry, I'm like okay. Let me give me a second. Brian Dable, Joe Judge to Brian Dable is a big upgrade. And Daniel Jones has had some trouble, obviously, with his fumbling problem, whatever. But his receiving core was so injured last year, man. People don't really talk about this, but Kenny Galladay was supposed to be his big connection piece. He's a big down the field thrower. PFF sees it. If you watch his games, he's pretty solid at it at the bare minimum. And he just wasn't available. None of his receivers were. His top three receivers were injured for half the year. And considering the NFC East is the NFC East, the Cowboys are going to take a step down. The Eagles are still a question mark despite their really good roster just because of the quarterback position. I could see the Giants being a surprise team and taking this division. I think they just have to take that step on offense. I don't think defensively they're bad at all. Especially, didn't they get that Ravens defensive
Wink
coordinator? I forgot.
Martindale. Yeah.
Yeah, they got Wink. They got. I mean, that's a huge upgrade. It's not a huge upgrade, but it's an upgrade, I believe. And I don't know. I see the potential. I just don't. I'm not like if we're grading on potential. You're not exactly who's the most like. You know what I mean? I
I
see a
get what you're
lot of.
trying to say. I think the stat to look at here is nobody has repeated consecutive division titles in the NFC
Yes,
East since the Eagles from '03 and '04. So there's always a chance. The Cowboys won it last season. It feels like the last couple of years it's been Eagles Cowboys with the occasional Washington win. I feels like the Giants haven't won since like 2011
dude. How did
um,
Washington win in 2019? How did that happen?
or
Or was it
2020. But
2020?
yeah,
Sorry. How did
that
that
was like one
happen?
of the worst divisions ever. But
Alex Smith, bro.
yeah, the Giants. It kind of depends. I have them at number 3 too. It kind of depends on the Brian Dable, Daniel Jones, because Brian Dable did kind of revive. I mean, I think Josh Allen's early career is being slept on, but he did certainly help Josh Allen go from a quarterback that had some inaccuracy issues and just was kind of
It was just a
erratic
raw talent. It was a
to an
raw talent.
absolute superstar. He's definitely had something to do with that. And maybe he can do that with Daniel Jones, who I don't think has quite the arm of Josh Allen, but has shown a lot of physical talent in spurts over the last couple of years. The offensive line is better. It's not great, but it's better. The receiving core, when healthy, with Kenny Galladay, Kadarius Toney, and they drafted Wandale Robinson, should be fine. Saquon Barkley, when he's on the field, has shown to be a very good to elite running back. The question is, can he stay on the field?
And a better offensive line. Best offensive line he's probably
Yeah,
had in his career.
and defensively, they're better. They have Wink Martindale, as you said, the best defensive schemer in the league outside of maybe Bill Belichick, right? So they have a very good interior defensive line with Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams. They have Adoree Jackson at corner. I do worry about some of the other corners, though. They have a decent safety core. So they have certainly potential to be pretty good on defense. I think I ranked them like 18, which is all right. And again, the uncertainty in this division, Washington, we have no idea how they'll be. The Cowboys are
Roller coaster
a
across the
different
board.
team year to year, and they have regressed. And the Eagles, they're the best team in the division roster wise, but with Jalen Hurts, you don't know. So there's always a chance
He
they're.
could totally just.
Yeah.
We don't know. I mean, we never know with these things. I think banking on the quarterback position, specifically dipping, is a like it's a better bet to make than a bunch of roster players. It's only one position, you know. I don't know. I just thought I'd throw that in. Number two, the
You guys could have guessed the
Broncos.
top two before we even
The
started this.
Broncos, obviously, just because of how much talent they have, they got Russell Wilson. Look, if you look at the difference between the Giants' potential and the Broncos' potential, just look at the quarterback position. I mean, like Russell Wilson has the potential to be an elite guy in at least the eyes of NFL fans again. And Daniel Jones, like at least on paper right now, can be like a top 15, top 10 guy, barring some crazy like magical career change. You know what I mean? And I think the only thing holding him back, there's two things. I think there's no, actually, there's a couple things holding him back. I didn't think about this all the way through. Okay. I think their coaching is still a little questionable. Nathaniel Hackett was the quarterback coach for the Packers. I just don't know how much validity that holds as an offensive coordinator with someone as different as Russell Wilson and how different this offense will probably be. Uh, I think the division is absolutely just appalling. I mean, as in like in competition wise, they have to play the Chargers, the Raiders, and the Chiefs, and all of them I could see being better or at the very least at the same kind of level. And I think thirdly, Russell Wilson, we just don't know if he has it all in the tank yet. I still think he's pretty good, but obviously he's took a dip in the last couple of years, so there's a potential for him to go down. But I mean, this division's wide open. They could totally take this by storm. I think it just takes. I think for them, it's just the coaching needs to be good, and I think receivers need to step up with Tim Patrick being out, and just generally them not being like a top group without Russ yet because of their quarterback position just wasn't there yet.
Yeah, so you guys could have guessed before we even started this that the Ravens or the Broncos would be the top two. The question was who would be one and who would be two. I have the Broncos at two as well. I think the thing here, for a couple reasons. So I think their defense is going to regress. They were a top 10 defense last season. I still think like they could be that talent wise, but I think they will regress as an overall unit because they lost Vic Fangio. And Vic
Mm-hmm.
Fangio was an amazing defensive coach for them, even if he wasn't a great head coach. Now they still have, again, a lot of talent. Justin Simmons, they added DJ Jones, they added Randy Gregory, they still have Bradley Chubb, Pat Surtain, K'Wan Williams. So a really talented unit. There's not really many weak spots on there, but I don't expect it to be. I think it'll be worse. I think the thing with this defense is Vic Fangio probably made these guys. He put them in the best positions to succeed, and he probably made some of these guys play above their heads a bit. They have also
Mm-hmm.
lost a little bit of depth there as well at some positions. So I think the defense is going to be worse. So where the Broncos, if they are going to go from worst to first in a very tough division, you have in this division the Kansas City Chiefs, who have won this division 6 years in a row. That's the longest streak running in the NFL right now. They've been to four straight
Really, it's
AFC
been that long,
championship
man. Oh my
games.
god.
Yeah, they've won six straight division titles. That's
Jeez,
insane.
puts things in perspective though.
Four straight AFC title games. They've made two Super Bowls in 4 years. We know how good the Chiefs have been. And even without Tyreek Hill, they're still more than a threat in this division. The Los Angeles Chargers, I think, are the most talented team in this division and one of them in the NFL. They have a lot of potential to be great this season. And the Lenny's Las Vegas Raiders as well, with all of the talent they have offensively, the new coach, Josh McDaniels, and still a defense with some playmakers, a team that made the playoffs last year. The Broncos did not. So, yeah, there's this division is the toughest in football. That's one of the reasons I have them second. And the other reason is I think they need Russell Wilson to be like a 2012 Peyton Manning, if you will, for Broncos fans there, in
He's gonna have to
terms
be
of
crazy.
he elevates everyone on this offense and he makes them one of the best in the league by his sheer presence. And I'm just not sure if we're going to see that. I think Russell Wilson will be good. Don't get me wrong. He could be a top 10 quarterback. but I don't expect Russell Wilson to be like MVP level, if that makes sense. He could be, and that's why they could go from worst to first. I look at the offensive talent; they've got a pretty solid offensive line. They've got a really good running back that I like, Javonte Williams. They've also got Melvin Gordon backing him up as kind of a spell back, who's also very good for his role. The receiving core is weaker without Tim Patrick, but Cortland Sutton's still there. Jerry Judy's still there. KJ Hamler, we haven't really seen, but he certainly has potential. They did lose Noah Fant, which nobody's really talking about, but that could be
He was
something.
productive in that offense, man.
Yeah. And then also Nathaniel Hackett, wait and see. I think with a quarterback like Russell Wilson, it's harder to implement a short passing game because Wilson's like 5'11", whereas Rodgers like 6'2". It's just easier for Rodgers to see the entire length of the field, unless it's like Drew Brees and he is calling his own plays essentially, and he's also the smartest quarterback in maybe ever. So um, it'll be interesting. I think there's an adjustment period, and I trust the infrastructure of the number one team a little bit more. But I could see it with the Broncos. Like if Russell Wilson is an MVP caliber quarterback and he elevates this offense to be a top 10 unit, and maybe the defense doesn't regress as much, then there is a world where they are top 10 on both sides of the ball and they win the division. So certainly a chance there.
Yep. I think one thing I'll throw in here is Cortland Sutton has been a great like get up and catch kind of receiver,
Yeah.
and Russell Wilson. We know how he likes to throw his deep ball. I think that could be a very dangerous matchup if it goes the right way. I don't know. I just kind of mentioned that. No one's really talking about that potential
Especially because Wilson
match made
was
in
so
heaven.
effective with that to DK Metcalf. Now,
Exactly.
Sutton
I
doesn't have
think
that speed, but
it's a decent replacement for
yeah.
DK, I think. But anyway, for number one, we already know Ravens. I think like we don't have to go over like exactly every reason, but the Ravens roster on paper is just fantastic. I think it's just really good. I don't see a lot of holes. The only hole I see is receiver, and I think we're all expecting, at least most people who are banking on the Ravens to be good this year, Rashad Bateman to take that step up. I was high on him coming out of college. I think he's going to be a good fit. And even if he doesn't step up, you still have Mark Andrews, and we've seen Lamar be productive even with only one receiver. So I'm not like that crazy about it. And Lamar Jackson is Lamar Jackson. Please stop saying he's a running back. He is a great quarterback and he's a great runner. That is the line with Lamar Jackson. Not he's a great running back and he can play quarterback. Okay, uh, their offensive line, their biggest weakness was their tackles last year. Right tackle was awful. Andre Villanueva got worked by Max Crosby week one, and at left tackle they were injured all year. Now they got their left tackle healthy, and they got Morgan Moses, one of the most reliable. Just he can block a pretty good. He's just consistent anyway. And I mean, on defense, like they did a great job replacing a lot of people. I mean, they got upgrades to safety core. They're going to get back their cornerback room. D line. I mean, everywhere I look, other than the loss of Wink Martindale, they've improved or retained talent. And considering they were just the most injured team last year, I consider this to be like a Niners 2020 to 2021 type of jump for them. Just because I've seen it before as a Niners fan, like your team getting destroyed after a really strong season the year before. And, they're going to be coming out of the gate, I think, with very fired up. Like they're going to be like, oh, Bengals won the division. No, this is our division. They have a lot more to play for, is what I'm saying. The Mars on a contract year. There's just a lot of things. There's just a lot of factors here that I point to them being like, yeah, they could totally win the division, considering that the Bengals, I think, are about the same talent-wise. I don't see why they can't win this division.
Yeah, so I'll start it off with the other division teams because that's kind of where you ended it. Um, Even though I think the AFC West and AFC North are the two best divisions, I think there's certainly a gap there, which is part of the reason, as I said, I have the Ravens at one and not the Broncos. The Steelers, I don't think will be very good, quite frankly. I think they'll be fine. Like, they're not going to be one of the worst teams in the league, but their offense is not good. I have no idea what to expect from the quarterback or offensive line positions or the offensive coordinator position for them. And the defense is good, but is it like elite? I don't
I
think
think their
so. I,
secondary
I
holds
would
them
take the
back.
Ravens defense over the Steelers. Um, and the Browns, we have no idea what to expect. Like zero. I trust
Yeah,
the
no.
Ravens far more. So it's really, to me, Ravens or Bengals for that division. It's essentially a 50-50 thing. Um, and in that, there's less competition, I think, for the Ravens than there is the Broncos. I think the Ravens, their defense is really good. It's a top 10 unit. They're only really weak at linebacker. Queen is all right. Bynes is all right. Neither of them are very good. But other than that, like their safeties now with Marcus Williams are really good. Their cornerback core, I mean, Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters coming back, Kyle
That's huge.
Fuller at nickel is even solid. Uh, their interior defensive line, Pearson Campbell are older, but they're still great against the run. I think Tyus Bowser has been underrated for a couple of years now. Maybe Owe can take a step up for at their edge position. And they are losing Wink Martindale, but they're replacing him with Mike McDonald, the former Michigan defensive coordinator, who I believe was with them as recently as 2019 or 2020, one of those 2 years. So he's in the system. He's worked in this system before. I trust their defensive staff there to produce a good defense. The Ravens almost always have a good defense anyway. Even last season, when they lost basically everyone to injury in the preseason, they were still like respectable defensively for most of the year.
Oh yeah, they
Um,
give teams fights.
so I like their defense a lot. I don't love their offense, but I think there's potential with their offense. I think their run game is going to be back to Ravens level run game. It really didn't go anywhere last year for most of the year. Even with Tyler Huntley, they were running the ball efficiently. They've got J.K. Dobbins coming back, who nobody's really talking about, but he was pretty good in his rookie year. They've got a big, powerful offensive line now, as you said. They replaced Villanueva with Morgan Moses. That's a big upgrade. They also have Tyler Lindebaum added, who I really liked out of the draft, and
Hopefully
Ronnie
he's all right
Stanley's
with the
coming
injury.
back, who when he was last healthy was like the second best lineman in the league behind Quentin Nelson. So their offensive line's pretty good now. They have the top three tight ends in the league. They have a former MVP at quarterback who's playing with a chip on his shoulder this year more than ever, I think. And the receiving core is really the big hole for the entire team, as much maybe other than linebacker. Um, but I am expecting Rashad Bateman to take a step up, and the rest of the core, like I've seen Lamar Jackson win games without good, like they won games last year without a good receiving core. They won games the year before without a good receiving core, and the year before. So like and the year before even. So like they've won games without, they're one of those teams that I think receiver, even as it's an increasingly important position, they're one of the few teams because of how they're built and because of how strong they are at every other position essentially that can get away without having a great receiving core, in my opinion, especially with Greg Roman's scheme. And they have John Harbaugh, one of the five best coaches in the league. So, yeah, I think the Ravens are certainly a team that I can see going from worst to first this year. You remember last year, too, they were like one of the best worst place division teams ever. Like, because they were
Oh,
at one point, they were the number one seed, like late into the year.
yeah.
And they lost like four straight one possession games at the end of the year. So,
That was
yeah.
heartbreaking, man. I was like, how do they keep losing? They keep almost winning. I mean, they had that
Right.
Rams game. Oh my
The
god.
Green Bay game, the Steelers
Yeah, those were
games.
heartbreakers, man.
Yeah.
Like you felt bad.
They
Like
were like
how,
a couple plays from the playoffs. So,
yeah. I mean, I think that just real quick, with the receivers, it's if you don't have great receivers, you need to be able to buy time and scramble drill for them to get open, not through their sheer athleticism or route ability. And with a really good offensive line now and a quarterback who's, I don't know, maybe one of the best scramblers in the league. I don't know about that, but it's they're going to be able to buy enough time when they don't get open to
they're going to
make it
be
at
put
least
in
into the
better
next round.
positions to succeed than last year, I think, for sure.
Yes, they will be a lot better positioned to succeed.
All right, guys, those are our rankings for every candidate to go from worst to first. Lenny and I both have the Ravens as the most likely candidate. We basically have the exact same list, other than you have the Seahawks at 7 and the Lions at 8, and I
Bro,
have the
I'm
Seahawks at 8 and
sorry.
the Lions
Jared
at
Goff is
6.
just bad,
Just
bro. I'm
because you
sorry.
have this fear of Seattle because of what they've
Okay.
done over the last 10 years.
Yes.
But anyway, guys, comment below who you think the most likely worst the first candidate is in order from 1 to 8. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel for more NFL content. Make sure to go check out mine and Lenny's social medias in the description. And with all of that said, thank you for watching, and God bless.